Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Dr. Peter Vishton, who's a professor of psychology at the College of William and Mary. He specializes in a number of things, not the least of which is memory. Peter, a real pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to delve into the question of how people use memory or misuse memory to come up with decisions. But before we even get there, can you just give us a little bit of a summary for how the human memory essentially works?
Well, there have been whole books written on that topic.
You only have about 30 seconds to answer.
But let me give you about the 30-second summary. So most people think of it as starting with perception, right? There's a whole world out there that comes in through our senses all the time. We attend to a few of the things that are out there and bring them into what we call our short-term memory or our working memory. That's where we use information to make decisions, to come up with ideas, things like that. Some of that information that's in our short-term memory then gets encoded into our long-term memory, whereas the short-term memory is characterized by a very limited capacity. We only seem to be able to remember about 7 things at a time at that short-term level. Once it gets to the long-term memory stage, you have essentially unlimited capacity. We never run out of long-term memory. Sometimes it's a challenge to get things back from long-term memory back into that working memory so you can think about it again. But the long-term memory, by and large, seems to be this wonderful unlimited storage place that not only will you be able to put an almost unlimited amount of things there, but once they're really well encoded there, they seem to stick for a long time.
Okay, so what types of short-term memories are more likely to make it into the long-term memory?
Meaningful things. I often think of this as when you have things that are in your short-term memory, if you want to get them into your long-term memory, the thing you want to do is relate them to things that are already there. So one of the things we're really good at remembering, for instance, is images. You can give someone a stack of 1,000 photographs, have them just flip through those photographs one at a time, maybe for 3 seconds a piece. Then you bring them back even a full day later, maybe a week later, and give them a new stack of images where they have 500 new ones and 500 from that original exposure set all shuffled together. If you ask people to sort them into the new image and old image pile, they do that with almost 100% accuracy. I want to say it's more like 90 to 95% accuracy. But our ability to take meaningful images and encode them into our long-term memory in just a few seconds seems to be really remarkable in humans. It's one of the things our brain just seems built to do.
Okay, so that was a leading question because one of the areas that I think that I see, let's say in my day job as an investment advisor, is that people have meaningful experiences, such as they get a call from the bank that says you're way in overdraft, or they do a terrible investment and they suffer painfully, A, because of the loss, B, because their wife yells at them, and C, because now they got to go back and get work overtime. And yet they come back over and over again and run into the same problems. People, they'll be in debt again next month, or they'll make a bad decision on an investment the next month using the same tools they used the first time. Why can't they learn?
So the thing that comes to mind, anyway, I'm not certain I know an answer to that, but the thing they're remembering is the outcome. I bet they remember that really well. I bet if you ask them to recall those very meaningful negative experiences years later, they could tell you about them in great detail. The thing they're not encoding is the information about what led to that. The thing they have to remember is in that situation, what was the thing that happened at the moment they made the decision to go in the direction of a particular investment that later on led to the meaningfully bad outcome. I think the trick there, probably your job as an investment advisor, is to get them to meaningfully encode that the good decision-making process so they can avoid that negative outcome later.
So what would be some of the tools I could use to encourage people that way?
The thing that I mentioned the good memory for images. That's one of the things that when we're suggesting ways people can remember stuff better is if we have this brain that's built to encode images, particularly emotional sorts of images, to take the information that you're going to remember, that you're trying to remember better, and turn it into an image. So, I talk about shopping lists and things. I'm trying to think of an investment-related kind of piece of information you'd want to encode. Maybe something like I don't know, remembering to evaluate the company in terms of its income, in terms of its net income or something like that.
Okay.
That you'd want to take that information about the net income and think about an image. Imagine something that for you meaningfully encodes the company. Maybe if you know who the CEO is, maybe you imagine the CEO standing in a situation. I don't know. Maybe there's a net involved, trying to fish dollars out of a fishbowl or something where it's not even just sort of an image, but an image that is salient, almost to the point of being a little bit bizarre. Something that when you think of this situation is just going to pop into your head as this weird thing that you thought about in the past. That those images tend to come to the forefront faster than others and play a bigger role in terms of guiding our decisions.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a good tool. That's actually very much what Harry Lorraine was telling us. Harry Lorraine is probably one of the world's greatest memory experts, not in terms of being a professor, but in terms of using his memory. He's been on the Goldstein on Gelt show a few times. For those of you who are listening, you can listen to the podcast or just go to YouTube and look up Goldstein on Gelt and Harry Lorraine, and to hear the fascinating interview with him, we're talking with Peter Vishton, a professor of psychology at the College of William and Mary. He's an expert in memory. He's a professor of memory, and he's been talking to us about creating images in your mind to help you remember things, to make them more meaningful. And Peter, it's reminding me of actually a study that I saw, and I forget who actually did this study, but one of the big problems that people in America have is that they don't often participate in the 401k or other retirement plan that their companies offer them because they don't see that it's the future. In other words, they can't imagine that. So one of these companies put a photograph of the client on their yearly statement, and then they used a computer to morph the photograph into what this person would look like 20 or 30 years down the line. And as soon as people saw that what they would look like, all of a sudden they said, wow, they were able to imagine themselves older, which I think is very difficult for younger people. And by doing that, that changed their approach. And then they went ahead and they invested a lot more in their long-term savings.
That's very clever.
Yeah.
That fits very exactly with this idea of trying to generate some sort of a meaningful image. Yeah, I like that idea. Instead of coming up with just asking the person to imagine themselves older, if you actually give them an image where they are older, that's going to be something that you remember very clearly. And yeah, the things we remember more clearly are the things that drive our decision.
I think one of the ways that sometimes I'll describe it to clients who are overspending, I see that people often come to me and think I have like a magic solution for how to invest, and usually a big part of the solution is simply you got to control your spending. And people will say, in fact, I'm just thinking of a client who came in, they inherited $250,000, and they said, what I'd like to do is to give $50,000 to each of my 5 children and then invest the rest. I said, I don't really see that as possible. It's not going to work out. Yeah, so much for remembering. So how can you help people improve their memory so that these, other than, let's say, creating an image, but generally, are there other tools that are available?
Well, so there are a lot of them, actually. I think I'm supposed to be a memory expert guy, so this often feels like a cheat when I suggest it. But writing things down actually works really well. This pencil and paper invention, it turns out to be remarkably accurate in terms of long-term information storage. The other thing that you generally encourage people to do, even aside from images, is to think deeply about the information you're trying to encode into your memory. So one of the worst things that can happen, I think we see this a lot as people get older, is they say, oh, I just don't have a very good memory, or I don't have a very good memory anymore. So ironically, they don't try to remember the information anymore. And it's even as our brains gradually decline over the course of later life, ironically, you need to be expending more energy in encoding things to get them encoded better. And if you're writing them down in a notebook, in some sense, you're storing the information so you can later open the notebook. But even if you never open that notebook, just the process of turning the information that you want to remember into words. You're probably not writing down every word you can think of. You're just writing some sort of a quick summary. Generating that quick summary forces you to think more carefully about the information, and it'll help you remember it better.
So that's a tool for thinking deeply, which is just converting it into a different format, meaning you didn't just hear it, but you also wrote it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I like that. I often tell people that just keep a budget. It sort of applies. They say, well, no one likes keeping a budget because it sounds miserable. But I say, don't even change your spending habits. Just write it down so you know. And then the next time we meet, all of a sudden, it's not so hard to cut because now they've seen it. They've thought of it in a different way.
There's one of the best ways to break any bad habit, or at least reduce the frequency of it, isn't to try to break the bad habit. It's just keep a record of whenever you do that thing you're trying to not do. If it's, if you want to reduce the frequency with which you overeat, don't try to eat less, at least not at first. Just carry something around with you, and whenever you eat something, write down the thing it is that you ate. The thing you see very consistently is when people start doing that, they start engaging in the bad habit less frequently. And usually the thing that's the explanation for why it works is it just makes you more conscious of it. That we have this sense that we're aware of all the things that happen around us and all the things we do during the day, but an awful lot of the reasoning that humans engage in happens on sort of autopilot. I mean, we get up and shower in the morning, not because we decided to get up and shower in the morning, but just because that's what we do every day. We go to work because that's the thing we usually do. It's only every once in a while that you actually stop and think carefully about something, and writing it down seems to work well. So that works with weight loss. It sounds like that works with budgets too.
Yeah, the weight loss thing, by the way, I will tell you from personal experience. A while ago I said, the time has come for my first diet of my life. And so I figured, what does someone do? You go to the iStore and you see what's there. And I found this app called MyFitnessPal. And all you do is you just write down what you eat. You type it in. And I ended up losing 25 pounds, which I was pretty impressed with.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And then what I saw, which was really interesting, was that this apparently is the most successful diet tool on the market, and it's free, by the way, bar none. So yeah, I think exactly what you said applies in a big way. And so,
I have this on my iPhone right in front of me right now, actually. My favorite feature of this app is that at the end of the day, you hit, finalize this entry, and it having taken in your height and weight and your typical physical activity and things, says if every day were like today, 5 weeks from now, you would weigh this much. Yeah. It's definitely it promotes that future-oriented kind of thinking that we were talking about before.
It is, yeah. All right, good. So cool. We both
maybe they should have that for budgets. If you spent this amount of money every day, this is how much you would have at the end of the next 5 weeks.
The loan sharks will be breaking your kneecaps. All right, listen, Peter, we are just about out of time. First off, thank you very much. And tell me in the last few seconds, how can people follow your work?
So I have a website at the College of William and Mary, pmvish.people.wm.edu, but probably the easiest way to find me is just Google Peter Vishton. There are only a few of us in the world, actually. You'll either get my father or you'll get me, and he can direct you to me if he's the one you happen to get.
All right, what we'll do is we'll put a link to your College of William and Mary website on the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com to make it easy for people to find you.
That sounds great.
All right, Peter Vishton, thanks so much for your time.
It was great talking to you, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.